Hello, fam. My name is Ntebse Mujana, and I'm a spiritual medium. Thank you so much for coming back to the channel. I do appreciate your presence here. I do appreciate your general audience to the message, and I appreciate you extending us to your family members, to your lovers, to every other person that you believe can benefit from the sharings on this channel. So, when I'm doing this recording today, yes, it is the 2nd of January 2026. And I did a yearly prediction almost 3 to 4 days ago, or 3 to 4 days prior to the date that I am doing this recording. So I then did a recording for this channel for YouTube, and then I also did it for um, the other family members on Facebook. And so on Facebook is much more interactive, obviously, and I'm able to talk to people in real time for me, right? And so as engagements got heated and they happened, I think I was one time in a happy moment, and I'm rising here today doing this recording because ancestors have come in and they looked at me funny. They side-eyed me on some, why are you going to be excited? Going to be excited on a point. So what happened, to give you a little bit of a background, I was giving this prediction, and one of the points which is going to be our points of discussion today, one of the points was on the issue of, excuse me as I'm going to be drinking water, um, was on the issue of the Vatican changing or looking at ways to include African spirituality and its practices. And as I gave that line, one of the family members, they gave an interaction and said, "Indeed, this is about to happen. The Vatican is about to give their findings on a study that they conducted on whether African spirituality is a thing to forego on this thing, or how exactly are we going to navigate ourselves around it." And in a moment of impulse, right? Uh, I then got to be excited. I was like, yay, yay. And so as I got excited, I continued with the reading, with the whole flow, and I was done. And after that, when I went to sleep, they woke me up and said, "Miguel, who said you must go and be excited about that point? It's not a point of excitement. It is a point where our revolution is not a negotiation." And that is the title of the message and the sharing that I'm going to put up here. I was particularly excited about the alignment and the accuracy of messaging, and that the fact that it was immediately affirmed. All right. And as much as I'm trying to defend my point, I'm still coming into a point where ancestors, their point is much more loud, and I hear them, but I'm trying to negotiate. I'm trying to get them see my point of view as the conversation is happening, although it has already happened, right? A friend of mine said to me this morning, said, when I ask God for an answer, I do not question the answer. And I've already been answered, but because there's a new concept of not questioning the answer, I'm still trapped in my old ways of doing stuff. So, as I believe, please indulge me. Can I please embellish on this subject? Now, my point as a spiritual messenger is to And you see, I can't say you can't shoot the messenger, and I'm not, and then I distance myself from the message. To a point, I can distance myself from a message. But if the message, I'm assigned to become a messenger for the next 25 years, I'm bound to catch feelings. Right? I'm about to catch feelings as the message is going on. I'm about to be on many sides of the message, and I'm about to be a recipient of the message and become a messenger. And because I'm a conduit anyway, so you can never have a conduit without a conduit any other how being affected, impacted in some sort of a way. So my point is now, here's my point. My point is, I then said, man, I was just excited where the information could at that moment be affirmed, and and they were saying that's exactly the thing. We are not wanting to be affirmed. This is a revolution, and it is a revolution as it is in its purest form, and therefore we are not wanting any approval. So you acted as an individual, and your approval addiction issues came in the way of the message. Now, why is that bad? Because I'm currently on the tip, on the loop of God's touch without human contamination. But I'm not trying to use God and ancestors interchangeably. But I want to understand this is the loop that I'm in. This is the theme of my life where I'm at. And so if now I get a message from Spirit and Spirit feels that I contaminated their message by my jubilance and my reaction of joy, and they're saying, go back. Go back and go give accurate facts and leave the message as it is. Right. So I'm coming very humble and contrite, like Paul says. Like Paul says. So we are here now. I'm going to be referring a whole lot. I open a couple of tabs so that I can get the years correctly as I'm trying to make this point that ancestor said I must make the points to you. And I appreciate their correction, and I come in and I unreservedly accept and respect the correction, because as a messenger it is important, right? Now we are talking about revolution. Don't you know we talk about a revolution? It sounds this time like not a whisper. They are not about whispering, right? So if you've been with me for the while, you will understand that this is where I am spiritually. Ancestors are saying this is year two of 25. In the next 25 years, we will be seeing the world in a very different way. And they will have at the time impacted all systems. Now, when they have impacted all systems, and they would have touched all relevant all relevant stakeholders in order for them to achieve their goal. No? So it then brings me to me trying to remind you again of what exactly is my core gift. And it has taken me up until this far, almost 13 to 12 years into this gift. It has taken me this far to get the strategy of what this whole thing is about. When the discourse on the land started here in my country of birth, South Africa, and people were talking about we want the land, and certain political parties emerged along that particular narrative, or we want the land. It was a big part of their manifesto, and it came on into economic freedom and everything. And I personally, as an individual and a young person in a country that is progressing, from all points. Obviously, I was an invested person, and at the time, as a communicator or a person that is giving information by virtue of my profession, you don't want to have a stance, but you cannot have help but become extremely interested in what is unfolding in your country. Now, spiritually, one of my chief ancestors said to me, Kharebe, come here. Tell me, if you want to, I my ancestors like to ask me questions. They don't feed me information. It's an engagement when we talk, and it's so interesting. Or maybe it's because naturally I'm a person who can uphold any other conversation. It's interesting what they start all revelations with a question. And so Socrates says that wise is he who knows that he does not know, right? And in all things, well, it's that's there. That's how Plato gives it to us. But in all things, the understanding is that in all things you must keep on asking questions, because the person who's asking questions will then see that they have a thesis in their mind, and the more that you have a statement of fact. And the moment you keep on asking questions, you realize that you develop an antithesis. You develop a contradictory statement to the initial statement, and you can only get that by a quest of information and by trying to ask questions. Okay, let's get out of philosophy class now. But I love the fact that they're philosophical with me, yo. Sharp. Now he then says, can we come here? And I go, and he says to me, you are talking about the land. And it's strange, he loves speaking in English. This particular ancestor speaks to me mostly in English, like all the time in English. And since he has come on to my center, my English is gone. Like I can no longer write, I can no longer spell, I can no longer, like he just took away my English and my writing abilities. And oh Jesus, I hope that he brings it back sometime, so that, because we need to document these things adequately. But anyway, his English is the one that I'm thriving on. He likes to speak English. I don't know why. But anyway, he is who he is, and we love him. Now he then said to me, you are talking about the land, Karebe. And I said, yes. And he says to me, and I think I've shared this with you, but I'm just going to recap for the people who are benefiting, who are getting or consuming this information for the first time. Now he then says to me, when you talk about the land, what are the first points of engagement in order for you to get and acquire back the land? And I said, I don't know, the government? And he says, no. It is it is the government of the land. And you cannot achieve anything until you raise the kingdoms and the queendoms of Africa, and you understand the social structure of Africa that had governed the land of Africa. And this is where you come in as my descendant, me, I interview this one. This is where you come in. Your call is to go and find the children of African kings and queens, and the rule and the healers of those queendoms and kingdoms, and bring them up. So his identity, he tells me that he had been a healer of thrones, and he had been a fortifier of thrones, of queendoms. So whenever somebody needed to be put on the throne, he would go and map up a strategy, a spiritual strategy for this individual, and he will fortify the kingdom or the queendom. And he would move around Africa doing that, right? And so that is my gift as I understand it. That's the core part of my gift. And every now and then there will come a person who is of my gift, right? And I hold them dearly and close to me. They know that. And so, yes, occasionally, okay, maybe all the time, there would be, oh, I got a job, my child graduated, all of these things. And it's because people need to get the buy in of this system of ancestors that it is the system to follow, right? And so they will then give us these quick wins. But the ultimate strategic end of where we are going is that we need to go and evoke the proper social structure of this world of Africa as we know it. So we have to really redo colonization as an understanding and a political scar of African countries. And so, in order for us to heal the land, the healers of the land need to rise so that they can then speak to the rulers of the land, and the land is then going to be agreeable. So that is why you are dreaming of your great grandfather who was a princess. You are, I mean, a great grandfather who was a prince, your great grandmother who was a queen, your great grandmother who was supposed to have been married by the king, but the king, when he was supposed to marry her, he did not do right by her. Now she's rising up, wanting to assume the queendom that it is rightfully hers, but this politicking came in. And so you will have those nuances as we do in readings, right? We do have them. And these are stories to be documented, because when they're talking about a revolution, they're raising you. You are the key stakeholder to this revolt that is going on. Now, what happened is that as I became excited, and ancestors were like, go back, go back. That's not the joy we wanted, because the revolution is not a negotiation. And I thought we might benefit from the understanding of both words, right? Revolution, because I do not want us to use them loosely, ne? Because now these things are going to govern us for the next coming 25 years. Now, a revolution, one of the understandings, or one of the dictionary meaning of a revolution is that it is a forcible overthrow of governance or social order. A forcible overthrow of a governance or social order as we know it. Overthrow, right? And when they say the revolution that is not happening, that is happening, it is not a negotiation. And I think maybe they got from me that I'm trying to believe that this thing is up for a negotiation on the table of the Vatican and wherever else. And that's where I angered them, or that's where they were not so pleased with me as the messenger. And they said that, so now negotiation is that the definition of a negotiation is a discussion that is aimed at reaching an agreement. Can you see the antonyms? Can you see the difference of words? A forcible agreement, overthrow agreement, overthrow discussion. So that is why they had to make me come and say that our revolution, it is not a negotiation. And they had to make me go back in history. So in one of the teachings, the sharings or the readings that I did of the predictions of 2026, and we're going to be speaking on two elements, right? They're going to be coming from one, but I'm really working on this issue by the Vatican, and I'm also working on the issue of raising the matriarch, that the young women are going to be in leadership, that young women are going to be impacting changes in their workspace. But again, the older and wiser women are going to be in much more highly profound leadership roles, speaking about one, leadership, two, health, and education. And their voice cannot be minced, like their words cannot be minced. They are firm like that, because the matriarchal energy is rising, and we want to then redo this whole thing of patriarchy and masculine energy that has not served us. In fact, it has brought the world into the disarray as we know it. We could. Now, they made me to go back and reminded me of the Netflix documentary that I mentioned on one of the platforms, that is the Queens of Africa, and they were doing this particular understudy on the life of Queen Njinga of the Ndongo tribe and subsequently the Matamba tribe. And I'm going to give you a quick rundown so that you understand why ancestors were not impressed with me being impressed by the outcomes of, or by the discussion of the Vatican. Right? Me, I was just excited. Oh my God, Kannete badimo are so true. But they were like, no, we are true, obviously, we are true. What do you mean? What do you mean? Why are you going to get excited that we are true? We live the truth, we are truth. And indeed they are. So there is a princess Njinga who gets to be born in the place called Ndonga. And she is the daughter of a person called Ngola, right? And she gets to be born. I have my Wikipedia happening here so that I can get the numbers right. She is born in 1583, right? Now, she is the favorite of the father. As a young person, as a young little girl, she gets to be trained as a warrior. So she really fights. She's not just a queen and a princess. She fights. She's a warrior, a real warrior. She gets to be trained in the militia, and she is a warrior with all the medals that are there of a warrior. Now, she also has a brother called Mbande, and she has two sisters, right? And so she has a conflict with the brother Mbande, that the brother is a weakling, like he's a pushover. And so the father, when the father dies, he had always thought that this princess Njinga is going to be queen, and she's going to run the kingdom, right? So she is king. She is king. My friend the other day sent me a message and she said to me, she wrote my name and she doesn't have so much, and she is king. Yo, it had a different impact altogether on me. And so she is king. Now, what happens about Princess Njinga is that she goes on to have a conflict with the brother. At some point, she has the baby, and the brother kills the son, and she gets very upset, and she realizes that, okay, the brother really means war. And so she relents and allows the brother to lead. And when the brother leads, the brother does a dismal job of it, and he even gets depressed. But this is where Christianity now comes into the fore here in Africa, right? So what then happens is that there was a slave trade that was happening around the tribes and around the countries in Africa. But it was happening at a scale of acquisition. It was happening in a way that after I've conquered this particular place, I then have their people as my slaves, and so therefore they can come and feed into my kingdom and do whatever that I as king want for them to do, right? Or I as the winning ruler, the triumphant ruler want to get them do, right? And therefore they become slaves. But now the Portuguese get wind of this thing and they come to the African shores. And when they come to the African shores, this thing is as tight as if like now I'm trying to get a blood pressure reading. So it's gonna be difficult for me to have it if it's so pinning me. Now, as we go on, the story says, remember this is a story that is happening in the 1624, right? Now, what happens is that this particular Princess Njinga is that there's an issue about the rulership with between him and between her and the brother, right? Now, this is the story. The story is the Portuguese get to the fore, get to the African shore, and when they do, they scan the environment as they would, but they already know that they want slaves, and so that they can send the slaves out and become a prolific player in the slave trade industry. They want to be a channel that is taking people from there and distributing to the rest of the place. Now, the princess hates that. She detested slave trade as an acquisition method any other how. But you can't always beat the system, right? But now, when other people are coming, the Portuguese are coming and they're saying, we want to infiltrate this thing and continue this thing using your people. She then makes it her lifelong mission to make life hard for the Portuguese. But as the Portuguese are coming in and they are fighting this princess who is a warrior and her people, they don't have the ammunition that the Portuguese have. And so the Portuguese, they can be able to bomb these people from afar. They can be able to shoot them. So distance become a barrier of a win for the princess, and she realizes that the mechanisms of her weapon is not going to make her win on her convictions. Right. So she loses a couple of fights and she gains a couple of fights. But more than anything, she gains a reputation for what she stands for. As the queen, as the princess that will never allow slave trade to happen. And she is very, very, very against her people being taken onto the slave trade, but it's happening in any way, and it's happening in the most amazingly cruel way. People are hung upside down, they are killed, they are demoralized, they are dehumanized, they are, whew, you can imagine somebody looking at your private part to assess what you would be worth. How dehumanizing it can it be? Now, the broader story is that the Portuguese and the princess now have to sit and come to an understanding, to a negotiation. Right? Negotiation, a discussion to reach an agreement. They come into various negotiations where the queen says, you can take Mara, not according to how you are taking. So she cannot fight completely the system. I mean, even in African Jew, people were even taking their own slaves, right? So it's a system, right? It's an economical system. An individual is a currency. A conquered individual is a currency. Now, the Portuguese say to the princess, we cannot come into any kind of an agreement with somebody who is not Christian. You need to convert to our ways. So we are sent here by the Pope, and you need to get baptized in order for you to sit across us so that we can at least hear what you are going to say. Why? Because the illusion of the gun is at play here. Right? The illusion of the gun is at play. That no matter how much I fight as the princess, these people always have an upper hand. So she agrees to be baptized so that she can at least try to negotiate with this man. In her agreeing to be baptized, she agrees to the principles of the Catholic Church in this turf, in her turf. Now, she is now an equal player, now that she's accepted this God. She's accepted the God of the book of the Bible. Now she goes and reads this Bible and she learns Christianity and she understands it and she detests it even more. But it is leverage that she is Christian, but not by heart. She's still consulting her ancestors, via one of the sisters who is a healer and she is a diviner, and she is a person that gives the strategy of war or strategy of survival for the princess as and when it is needed. But very much there is ancestral veneration, there is ancestral seeking, ancestral practices as a way of seeking guidance to the next strategy, to the next step. So obviously the Portuguese don't like that, and they keep on saying you have pagan ways and whatever. The whole narrative, you understand them, you are learned. Sure. Now we come to, excuse me as I try to sit comfortably. Now we come to a point where, moving a very long story, I'm trying to explain to you a whole lifelong mission of an African queen. Now, at the end of the day, she has to really get into bed quite literally with dangerous people and people that she did not agree with, who were practicing cannibalism. But now she wants the army. She keeps on wanting to add onto her army because she only had this Ndonga people who were farmers and who were fishers and they were providers of food, but they were not the defenders of turf. And so Now, what happens is that she gets to marry this guy and she acquires an army of 80,000 people and she becomes the most powerful African queen, although she was coming in with her own integrity because already she was making it very difficult for the Portuguese and they feared her because now she could be able to close the small trade routes or routes, as the American have learned to learn, or American pronounce routes as routes. So now let's continue. What then happens is that she gets to a point where she then says, I'm unable to convince this man to hear me and leave my people alone and stop taking slaves from our country, from my turf. The best thing for me to do, because these people fear the Pope, they get all their marching orders from the Pope. The best thing for me to do is to get the Pope to recognize me as a sovereign space that cannot be infiltrated as and when, and the Portuguese must respect whatever agreement that the Pope and I are going to be coming with. But I want the Pope to recognize me as a queen. And the Pope says, the people of the Pope who were now at that point teaching all of this Catholic principles and dogma, now they say, but the Pope is not going to entertain you, Pope, when a wonderful queen, because now you have not done a full conversion. So even though she's baptized, there are still certain things that were questioned about her to say, but no, it's not a full conversion. And she said, what would be the full conversion be? You must stop your ancestral practice. You must stop all of these rituals. You must. And she says, and they say to her, we want 200 more slaves. And she says, on top of the thousands and thousands and thousands of slaves that you've taken from this place, you still want 200 more. And she says, I'm going to give you the 200 more slaves, because now in between they are going through wars and they fear her, and she conquers, and she's a real warrior and she's a real queen. She's like the epitome of feminine leadership and the epitome of astute leadership. So she's a force to be reckoned with. So the only thing that she needs to get is the buy-in of the Pope, and they go back and forth for her to get the buy-in of the Pope, and she keeps on writing letters to and fro for the Pope, for the Pope. And after a couple of years, 5 years later, the Pope does recognize her. But now the terms that she had to meet was that indeed her people will adopt the Catholic manism, they will adopt the Bible, and it is fine. The Pope can even bring missionaries, because at the end of the day, it was killing her own people, and there were practically no more people left on her shore because people were being taken away as slaves. And so the adoption of Catholic practices, it comes under duress, but it also comes as a strategy of her to be recognized, because when she's recognized, the smaller little boys here are not going to be fighting her. And so at some point, she gets into an agreement with the Dutch, but the Dutch really don't do much for her, because now the Dutch are in competition with the Portuguese, so that they can then have their own slaves and take them wherever that they need to take them there by Dutchland. So everybody's now coming to the African shore to harvest slaves, and they're using this tactic of the Bible and the concept of God. There's a line where she says, wait, let me get this straight. You are saying that we must leave our ancestors who have guided us for years and trade that in for your God, that we cannot even pronounce his name. And the God that has come here and sent you to approve slavery and get the God's people to be your property. And you are saying that is the same God that I must leave everything and give and surrender my whole being and trade my ancestors for. Is that what you are saying? And they say, yes. That conversation is why we are having this revolution today. That let me get it right. Your God that has killed thousands of my people, taken them away, broken families in the understanding that he is God and he's a power and he's a ruler of all of us that we live, and we cannot even pronounce whatever book that you are coming here that we must read. Are you saying that I must take everything and give it to that God? It's embarrassing that even the Portuguese cannot defend this God when somebody is analyzing that God in that way. But it's a tit for tat, and it was a negotiation then, and she had to do what she needed to do for her to get the recognition, and the Catholic Church overtook the place. And years later, with the Portuguese having killed one of the sisters, because now she was spying and giving her tactics of the Portuguese, and she always was one step ahead of the Portuguese strategy on war and closing down all of the ports, right? So they were wise like that. There were women coming against what you would call white supremacy or Portuguese supremacy, or even political supremacy, or even, what can we say, spiritual positioning supremacy, right? And so when ancestors today are saying to me that our revolution, it is not a negotiation, it's coming from me understanding how many times their stance was the same and the odds were against them because they were being killed. Now, you are as queen as you have a constituency. And when you no longer have a constituency and the people that that are following you, who are you leading? And at some point, she had to come and preserve the lives of the children and the women of the people that she was leading, raped, massacred, whatever. And these people all came in the name of religion and God and their version of Christ. So you can imagine when they are telling me in a prediction that the Vatican will want to include African practices after they gave Queen Injinga such a hassle to recognize her as the first African queen in a Catholic church, or whatever they mentioned, whatever they called it. And at that point, when Angola changes its name, remember her father's name is Angola. And so this country, Ndonga, gets to then change its name and it becomes Angola. And at the time that it becomes Angola, there are already 6 million slaves that were taken from Angola alone. When religion has messed us up, it has worn our minds, and it has made us denounce our African ways and continued to kill us and continue to rob us, and we still want to compete on a simple issue that if I use snuff, am I against the Christian God? I get mad because we've taught these lessons, not at the level that they are now making me come in and saying this revolution, we are fighting it because a person was born already in 1583, and in 1624 it had already been an issue. We're mentally and spiritually colonized. So religion is a ball of hogwash. No matter how you think of it. And if you think about properly religion on its own, it becomes an intervention to a political governance system, including Jesus Christ in the concept that we know him to be, because Jesus was an intervention of a political situation run by the Romans. And that is why Jesus gets to be unleashed, or the story of Jesus gets to be told in the way that it is, as the savior, but he's coming in to fight a political system using a spiritual system. And this is where we are coming in. We are individually being raised as the Jesuses of our own families. We are individually being raised as the princesses and the queens of Injingas of our own families. And when they are saying we are raising women up, the matriarchal system that has been affected by the patriarchal system, this is what we are trying to fix. This is what we are trying to fix. And so when they say that the revolution is not a negotiation, it's because they've negotiated way too much. And just in this country alone, with 6 million, you've never seen 6 million people. You've never sat here and looked at 6 million people. You've never. And you are likely to die not having looked at 6 million people at a go. You cannot fathom looking at 6 million people because of this Christianity and this God that you keep on wanting to defend. Whenever we are saying, ancestors are saying, and you say, am I not against God? And I'm saying, who is God? Show me the Ra. Show me. Do you understand the God of the sun? I want you to tell me about your African God. If you can mutter 3 sentences of God without making a reference to any religion, you have my respect. I've not figured it out myself, because I'm deconstructing the myths as I am taking you along with, because I'm looking at a step of 2 to 25. We are fine. Let's continue. Now, there gets to be somebody who gets to be born as my mom. At this stage, my mom. Ngwana wa ha Makgetha, the mother to Nzoba, Nkhonoma Nzoba. And so as I was preparing for this thing, our sisters had already been, they had spoken only to me about the teaching, yeah, Yaga Princess Injing, and I had to come through. And as I was opening my phone, this is the screen, what the screensaver for my phone. It has my vision board there, and then it has Nkhonoma Nzoba. And when I shared it with my friends, they thought, well, okay, I'm saying in 2026, I'm going Hankono Mansup. I'm like, no, that's home. I don't need to announce to nobody that I'm going home, but it is about the love. It is about the humility. It is about the accuracy. It is about the embodiment of expressing the true voice of ancestors that I want to drag in and put it in my soul. No matter what happens, I subscribe, I align my gift to that kind of a person and do everything else from exercise power, spiritual prowess from a feminine point of view. Be powerful in spirituality and yet be the softness of femininity and the wisdom of femininity and the flow with nature that comes with being a feminine individual. Now, Nkhonoma Nzuba gets to be born in 1793. 1793. For those who do not know, the history says that she was a prominent Basotho prophetess, a rainmaker, a storyteller, known for her significant influence on the Basotho people and her role as an advisor of King Moshoeshoe. Here is a healer, a prophetess, an advisor of King Moshoeshoe. It is at this point that people who don't know why Nkhonoma Nzuba found me favorable, it's at this point, because she is exactly in line with my calling. A healer of the throne, advisory to the kings, using spiritual tactics. So I'm still being trained, obviously. Still still being trained. So it is not only me, there are thousands of us who are being raised. And there are thousands of you that I meet through our consultations, and our lives make sense because we don't know why we are here. Like, my goodness, why am I a healer? Why did they call me? Coco, why? And when we put it together step by step, it's serendipity of another thing. It is a beautiful find of another thing because it gives us purpose. Yes, we are still going to be giving you combos and fighting your rakati that stole your underwear and what. Because you need to understand these principles and you need to review the history that has happened without the fear of this God that has enslaved more than your mind. Let's continue. Now, the story of Nkono Manzoba, everybody knows, and if you do not know, please self-acquaint. And now she is a prophetess. What do I want to read for you? What do I want to read for you? I wanted to read this part that says, Mansupa was born in 1973 in Dikotsi or Ramakheteng, in present day South Africa. So it was really not in South Africa. It had went across through the demarcations, and now that's where we're finding her. In the area Malimuteng is now South Africa. She was the daughter of Maketa, a notable figure in Basotho history, and was descended from royal lineage. Her early life was marked by hardship, including witnessing famine and being captured by an Nguni group during the Difaqani period, which deeply influenced her and later her prophetic abilities. Political situation, prophecy. The fight about Difaqani, it was about the rulership of, the stories of Shaka and the cousins, and let's move on. Now, I wanted to then say that by 1840, by the 1840s, Manzoba had gained a reputation as a powerful rainmaker and seer. She was known for her accurate prophecies, which guided the Basotho during turbulent times, including the conflicts of African settlers and the British political takeover. Her spiritual strategies are once again proving to be accurate. Her predictions were instrumental in battles such as the Battle of Firfur in 1851 and the Battle of the Berea in 1852. She called for the preservation of Basotho customs and rallied the people against external threats, becoming a unifying figure during a time of strife. She called for the preservation of Basotho customs. Matiak, we can negotiate political intervention using spiritual tactics, and we cannot give. So how Mansuba knew about the British and the Afrikaners? Her prophecy, she told the Queen, King Mushweshwe, to say, Bra King, I see a vision of people who are coming and they have red skin and they have a coin that is, they have a button. She called it a button, like a kunupi, a button. So they were presenting with to us a button that did not have holes. Right, kunupi is namasoba, a button that did not have holes. And so she was in a vision seeing a coin, money, and she says, this button without holes is going to be the thing that will capture us and make us fight amongst each other here in Africa, here on our shores. So indeed, they bought us. And this is why we are having the distortion that we are having. And that's why even the winds, right? We feel like we needed to be affirmed. And that's why Badimbaka were angry at me. And so that's why they sent me here to come and clarify that the revolution is not a negotiation. And so, if it means I must come here daily and get a strategy, a little bit of the strategy, and tell you where we're going, it's good that I'm going to be doing that because it's my job. But you can see the similarities of the matriarchs of gifted people who were fighting political systems and they lost. So, and well, I'm not going to say they lost. They lost some battles and they won some battles. But it is a battle of a minefield at this stage. And that is why when Nkono Mantsopa then comes and says, what is the similarity between Princess Njinga and I, Ntabi? And I'm like, yo, the Catholics came in and overtook the queendom of Njinga. And then the Anglican came in and took the space of the Basotos. Do you see why it cannot be a negotiation, this revolution? And I said, I do. And so she instilled a different pride in me, a different pride altogether. And so I'm hoping that you understand when they're saying we are raising women whose voices cannot be confused. And when there's a slight confusion, they will bring me 3 days later to say, come sit down. What was that about? What was that about? And it was not even it wasn't that Muhulu from Zimbabwe who said, Karame, what did you go and do there? And I appreciate the miseducation. And we must get the education right. We must get the pride right. I like to listen to these people who are woke and they are beaded and they are very African, pro-African, Africanism and Afrocentric and all the words that mean, yeah, they are not the ones who spell Africa with a K. Those ones, the Azanian, the true Azanian. I respect them a lot and I like to listen to them, but there is a thing that they lack and it is faith, that we can develop strategies and we can actually own the narrative again and document it and relive it and refuse to even be given a, I mean, it's a preparation. Let's cut that thought. It's a preparation of spirit to tell me in 2026 that while you are starting this revolution and we are starting this revolution and we are raising that hill and that hill and on these platforms, most of you are saying one thing. There, you are saying one thing, but do you believe in what you are saying? And do you see who each and every one of you represent in this historical thing? We are reinventing the history, raising the very same people who were once here. And white supremacy and religious connotations must not keep you engulfed, must not keep you gomorago because you want to please a God that was never ours. The concept of God are also fitly moyona on an African God. And we need to get there. We need to make sure that before we die, we understand why Bibele, and where is the book of Enoch that talks about the Christ of here. We need to get that. We need to get that manuscript. As we are writing, we need to get the people who are going to get such revelations. As I'm getting my revelations and I'm sharing with them with you, and you are using them because you are still trying to hold on to being sacrificed. Ubizunyaka 35,000 with my life. And you are so short-sighted that you are only doing this thing for the 10 days, 6 million. But 6 million people died. When they are revolting, do you understand how much of an army comes with those 6 million people who are just in Angola? I don't have the stats about what then happened in Benin. I don't have the stats about Ghana. I don't have the stats about South Africa. I don't have the stats about... I do not have those stats. But when they say ancestors are having a revolution, it is not the ancestors Stantabisongwejana. It is the 6 million people who were displaced from their land in Angola alone. So now you want to then sacrifice the messengers of people who are coming through with such information, who are getting such a revelation, and everything is being assembled so that we get our minds and the education disconstructed out of our minds. And now we are saying, why are healers getting educated people to come? Why are ancestors getting educated people to come and be healers? Why are they getting the medical doctors, the magistrates? Why are they getting? Because they are they're affecting the social order. They're affecting the social order. That if every other person that you believe is primitive, sitting under a tree, she's talking about this thing, and now we are saying, where's your degree? Where is your master's? Where is your doctorate? And if you don't produce a thing that was given to you by what other people are going to be living, or it's your statement of worth, it is your paper of worth. Other than that, unless you can produce a paper of worth, you are not worth a thing. That is why they're getting you, the magistrates, my clients. That's why they're getting you, the leaders of the airlines, my clients. That's why they're getting you. That's why it's important that you understand your gift. And it's important that you understand that you need to impact the revolution from the point where you are seated at. Now, people who want to kill me because I'm saying people must get out of the church and they must understand that they are church in themselves and their own ancestors are working in their own DNA and what. They're only trying to kill me for that. That's how they're trying to abort this mission. That's fine. It's okay. It's sweet and nice, and it is a mission there. But the revolution needs to be spoken about. It needs to be understood. We need to feel. The revolution cannot be a discussion. It cannot be a negotiation. This thing that I just read to you about Nkono Mansuba, it talks about how Nkono Mansuba was a Christian prophetess. She died denouncing that title. That's why That's why if you Google the Anglican Church, if you say Mansuba, if you say Mansuba, then it automatically brings up a thing that says Mansuba Anglican Church. But they affected the search, the optimization search engines, and then when you look at it, Kindomba Hama Mansuba. The Anglican Church, Kindomba. Search it. Mansuba Anglican Church, you meet at the door. Yankono Mansuba. Whenever somebody starts a revolution, it will destabilize somebody that has benefited from the misunderstanding, from the miseducation, from the slow understanding, the slow-witted, from the being obtuse by people, slow understanding of people, stultified people, made stupid. That's what it means. It's not an insult. It is history. And history is judging us harshly right now. For the fact that you are seated there in your office, every day you are a slave because you still need to maintain that Range Rover and that beautiful address by somebody else's system that does not work for you. We are getting re-educated. And that is why they are saying materialism is not an issue. Your spirit is. They no longer care about how many numbers of people they have sitting there. They now care about how many numbers of people are still going to be perpetuating the oppression of the bloodlines. You can no longer be apologetic. You can no longer be apologetic. You can no longer want to fear the concept of death and being chowed by a fire that is as red as that book cabinet there and my top. I didn't. I want hell. I've spoken to so many dead people in this life for me to understand there is no hell. The hell is going against the grain. The hell is going against the tide. The hell is going against what you know. What you know. Churches are going to close. 6 million people. One country. Revolution. Leaders of churches are going to play us for the survival of Kunubi. Isna Masuba. Your spirit can no longer have a price. You must refuse this check before the narrative gets to do other things. And remember, this is a system. A system has advocates, it has writers, it has poets, it has people who can come in with the most amazing propaganda. It is a system. People must fuel it up. A revolution have to work with people. Revolutions are largely based on faith. Because now you are coming in with a thing that you have not seen, and you're going passion and aspiration and the vision of the person who is telling you that I've seen it and it is possible. I have a dream. It came from a supernatural interaction, a dream. The subconscious said to him, to Martin Luther, that this thing is possible. Project unto the future. He did not say I have a strategy. He didn't say I have the education. He didn't say he said I had a dream. I had a dream that one day. May the good Lord be with you. May we understand before we try to keep the status quo as it is. It will no longer serve nobody. Because if there's a revolution under your feet, where you are standing is not safe. You might as well make sure whoever is starting the revolution gets to tell you, stand there, because I'm about to do something there. Now, if you don't hear, you will be trampled and templed just from under your feet. You're a child of the soil. The reason why you must remain barefooted so that you can hear the rhythm of the soil. You can hear when the blood is speaking to you from the soil, because God says to Cain, your brother's blood spoke to me from the soil. It's almost like God was not even aware that Cain has killed Abel. Until the blood of Abel spoke to God from the soil. That is why we are mediums. Somebody's blood is asking us from the soil to speak to you. If you are godlike, you must heed when the blood is speaking to you from the soil. God says your brother's blood cried. It cried. Because somebody came in and stole and killed because of jealousy of resources. If you study political science, they tell you that politics is the study of resources. Politics is the fight of resources where a group of people not seen calls themselves a system of governance. You must debunk the face of the system. You must understand what kind of system are you. Your brother's blood cried out to me from the soil, and I heard it. So how many people's blood are crying from the soil that you can ignore? My name is Ntabisa Mujana. Bye bye.